Hello and welcome to the garden on what is yet another dull and rather moody day. So we've had quite a long period now of overcast and quite wet weather, and that is causing a few problems in the garden. There are some things that are enjoying it. The celeriac loves these conditions. The leeks that I transplanted only recently, well, they've showed no signs of being bothered by their rather brutal treatment. I think if I'd done that during more typical weather for this time of year, they would have flagged a little bit and sulked for a week or two till they got their roots back down. But actually they're growing away great already. So I'm very pleased with that. But the high humidity over, well, a fairly long period now has caused me problems in several parts of the garden. In the greenhouses and the polytunnel, there's been just a touch of botrytis. I've removed a handful of dodgy looking tomatoes. As soon as I saw that there was a problem with them, I've whipped them off to try and prevent that from spreading. I've thinned out the foliage on the tomatoes to give improved airflow and all of that, but still there is just a touch of botrytis showing up, and I don't like to see that, not at this time of year. I expect it later in the season, you know, as we go into autumn, but not now, not in July. It should be warm and sunny, and this long period of high humidity, well, that's not really normal, and it's not great under cover, but that's under control. But outdoors, I've got a couple of problems that I need to look at. And the first one is powdery mildew. Now, probably the first place that's going to show up is on the courgettes, and sure enough, they are starting to show signs of it. And if I don't do something with it, they will be completely covered. It's not a huge problem. It's quite easy to deal with, but if you let it run wild, it will reduce the vigor of the plants, and that's going to be the end of the useful crop. And they really have been cropping like crazy. So I've got 2 plants here, and that's more than enough because they're just producing at an incredible rate. So I've also got some other summer squash, and I've got some winter squash. Now, they don't show much powdery mildew. I think there might be a couple of spots starting on one of the winter squash, so I'm going to take a close look at those as well and give them a little bit of a spray. So here's one of the courgette plants. It's got some lovely fruit on it. Actually, I'll take that flower off now. It's always a good idea to take the flowers away after they've been pollinated, because these tend to get a little wet and soggy and are often a source of rot starting at this end of the fruit, and that we don't want. This one's still open here, so I'll leave that one, but as soon as it's done its job, it's no longer needed, so it's a good idea to remove them. But you can see we've got tons of fruit coming. We've got this one here that could be harvested at any point. We've got another over there. There's a third and a fourth here with the flower on it, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 fruits that I can see coming already. Oh, and there's a 5th one round the back. So there's just tons of fruit on these, and they're kind of at the peak of their productivity, I suppose. But this powdery mildew that you can see on this leaf, well, that's going to bring that productivity right down unless I deal with it. So, I mean, this is just classic signs of powdery mildew, and the older leaves really do suffer. This one is completely trashed, really. So my treatment plan for these is twofold. First, to remove the older leaves that aren't going to be up to much, even if it weren't for the powdery mildew, and then to spray these leaves with what I think is a pretty handy organic fungicide, and that would be milk. So I'm going to get in here and remove this old growth. I mean, it's not useful growth anyway. I don't really want it there. It's always a good idea to come around and tidy up the plants from time to time and take away these old leaves, they're not really doing anything useful at this stage. It's these young leaves that we want to keep and protect. I think I'll take that one away as well. That silly little thing's not doing anything. Thinning out the foliage is going to help a little bit with airflow as well. That's always a good idea. I think I can get rid of that leaf. And I think that one as well. Right, so that's tidied that plant up a little bit. Oh no, I can get rid of that. Don't want that leaf. In fact, I'll get rid of that. Come on, off you come. There we go. And that one. But these old leaves, they're not contributing a lot of energy to the plant, so it's no loss to remove them, I think. That one's all right. But you can see that on these leaves, they're just starting to show signs. So all of these need a quick spray to hopefully bring this under control. I think this leaf here, something else has been bothering it. Yeah, that's not great. I'm going to remove that one as well. So I don't like to do too much spraying in the garden. We'll occasionally use a squirt of soft soap, sometimes something based on pyrethrins to deal with things like aphids. Particularly if I see woolly aphid on the apple trees, they need to be dealt with because they'll cause quite a lot of harm. But I don't use anything too harsh, and you know, I accept there's going to be a little bit of sort of pest damage and disease in the garden, and that's entirely natural. But if I don't do something with this powdery mildew, these plants will be finished in a week or two, particularly in conditions like this. This is ideal. It's not too cold, but it's high humidity, and the powdery mildew is going to thrive. So this is filled with water, and I'm just going to add some organic milk. And milk has really rather handy fungicidal properties, and a spray of this should help me manage the powdery mildew. Now it's not an instant cure, and it may need to be repeated perhaps weekly for a few weeks to get it under control. But having removed some of the worst affected leaves, that's going to slow the development of it a little bit, and now I'm going to spray everything that's left, and that hopefully will address this problem. And then I'll go around all of the other cucurbits and check that I don't have it developing there as well. So now I just want to make sure I give these a thorough cover with this spray. Now that one is especially badly affected. I think I might as well just remove that. Now even on these leaves, they don't show it much, but I can see it starting. So even on these, it's well worth giving those a little spray as well. These leaves are okay. This variety has quite silvery foliage. I've noticed that across several of the plants and from early in the season, so I know that that is not a problem, but you won't be able to see it perhaps on the camera, but I can just make out there are some white spots on that as well, and those are definitely the powdery mildew. The new leaves, of course, are healthier, they're more vigorous, and they won't be attacked so readily, but I still want to spray everything to try and get this under control. So powdery mildew, it's not a huge problem, but now onto something that's a little bit more devastating. This is one of my 35-litre potato pots, and well, you can see I've got quite a serious problem here. All of the haulms have collapsed and there is rot down at the base. I'll just zoom in on that. So you can see this is all black and soggy here. This is not good for anything. And this happened really rather quickly. So the top growth started to sort of shrivel up a little bit, and then there were lots of yellow leaves, and then almost overnight they just collapsed. It's only happened so far to 2 of these. Both of them curse pink, though I doubt very much whether that's the problem. These pots are in the middle of the batch here, and so I suppose airflow was less good around these pots. And well, I'm not 100% sure what this is, but it rather looks like potato blackleg to me, and that's a bacterial problem. And this here is quite typical, this black rotting stem, and yeah, that's a bad one. It's like I said, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that could be a touch of blackleg, and in a way that's worse than late blight, because if blight affects the top growth, as long as you get to it in reasonably good time, you can cut the foliage down, leave them alone for a couple of weeks, and then lift whatever tubers may be available. And so long as it hasn't got to them too soon and there are still some tubers there, many of those are going to be sound. I don't remember having too much problem with blighted tubers in the past, even when we've had badly blighted top growth. So long as you get to it before that has traveled down to the tubers, many of them will they will be sound and they will store reasonably well. If any of the tubers have been affected, then they're going to rot and go really quite nasty. So you have to keep an eye on them while they're being stored to make sure that rots aren't developing. But blackleg, well, that's very likely to have wrecked the tubers. They will be discolored and rotting and horrible. Also, it's far too early for these. These are a main crop potato, and ideally they'd need at least another month. Now there probably are some small tubers there, but if this is blackleg, I don't think they're going to be up to anything at all. So I'm going to cut down that foliage. I'm going to get rid of it. I can't remember whether I can compost that safely or not, so I will be a little bit cautious, because I know that that can remain in the soil, so I'm assuming it can also remain on the foliage. Not 100% sure on that. I should have checked that before filming this video, but I'm going to get rid of that foliage, and I'm just going to leave the pot for now, and then I'll tip them out later and see if there's anything worth keeping in there. I think the tubers will be pretty small. I know there are tubers because I can see one of them exposed near the surface. It doesn't show signs of any problem at the moment. Obviously it's not going to be a good potato because it's been exposed to the light, but it does suggest that there might be some small tubers further down. That soil will not be used for growing potatoes again. The plan with these, of course, is to recycle this potting compost. You can't keep buying mountains of potting soil, and it's good for at least some years, provided you don't get diseases like this. I think, to be safe, I will use this for something else. I will probably just spread this on the garden somewhere. I'm not growing potatoes or not even other crops from the same family, so I can spread this somewhere where they're not going to grow, and that's not going to cause us any problem. And then I'll have to replace this compost when we replant. But anyway, there's not a lot I can do about that. Mildew is rather more easy to deal with. But I am hoping that we're going to get some warmer, drier weather, and that's really going to help with the health of these plants. These kinds of diseases that are dependent on high humidity, you really don't want to be seeing those in the middle of what should be summer. I expect to get them in the autumn, of course, but not now. So once again, the weather is causing some problems this year. But anyway, that is all for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and bye for now.